The compound breathed like a living creature, always awake, always listening. Even the walls seemed to lean closer whenever someone spoke, as if hungry for stories. People often joked that in this place, a whisper could outrun a horse. Before the sun set, it would travel from one corner to another, changing shape like a mischievous spirit. Mothers kept their voices low. Elders cleared their throats before speaking. And children learned early that silence was safer than careless words. Even the breeze carried secrets here, curling around windows and slipping under doors. Afternoons wrapped the compound in a warm, dusty blanket. Women sat on low stools outside their rooms, peeling vegetables with practiced hands. Tomatoes rolled into metal bowls. Onion skins flew with the wind, and peppers glowed red like small embers. Children raced barefoot across the uneven ground, their laughter rising over the sounds of the city. The air was thick with the smell of fried akra, dried dust, and spices drifting from pots simmering on coal stoves. A bicycle bell rang lazily in the distance, mixing with the chatter of neighbors who spoke as they worked. As the sun dipped lower, the men began returning home one by one, shoulders slumped from yet another day wrestling with the city. Their shoes carried dust from the crowded roads, their shirts clung to their backs, and their faces held the weight of things left unsaid. Some greeted their families with tired smiles. Others simply sighed and lowered themselves onto wooden benches. Uncle Boma muttered, "This city will drink a man's strength if he's not careful." Still, despite the heaviness in their hearts, there was comfort in knowing they walked into a compound where familiar voices waited. Through it all, the generator kept humming like an old elder who refused to sleep. It rattled, coughed, then roared back to life again, reminding everyone that darkness could be pushed away, at least for a few hours. People complained about the noise, yet they were grateful for it. "At least we can see each other's faces," one woman laughed. Its constant vibration blended with quarrels, with jokes shouted from balcony to balcony, and with the secrets people tried to hide. The generator was a compound's heartbeat, loud, stubborn, and full of stories. In this place, gossip moved like a harmattan wind, quick, dry, and able to turn a simple remark into a storm. One person sneezed, and before long the compound decided they had malaria. Someone whispered about a late-night visitor, and by morning, that visitor had become an entire scandal. Old women shook their heads and clicked their tongues, claiming they knew the truth even before it happened. Sometimes people laughed about it. Other times it cut deep, but no matter how hard anyone tried, rumors always found a way to slip through cracks like dust. Among the noise and movement lived Aisha, the quiet girl whose thoughts were louder than her footsteps. At 19, she moved gently through the compound, noticing things others overlooked. She watched the expressions people hid and listened to the tones they used. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was a shield she wore to protect her growing mind. Sometimes she spoke, but mostly she observed, collecting truths like beads she wasn't ready to string together. A few whispered that she kept too much inside. They didn't know she heard more than most. At the compound gate sat Mama Dara, the woman who missed nothing, not a visitor, not a changing expression, not even a suspiciously quiet day. With her wrapper tied tightly around her waist and her hands always on her hips, she was feared and respected. Her tongue was sharp enough to cut through lies, and her voice carried far. People often said, "If you want to hide something, don't breathe near Mama Dara." She laughed loudly, scolded children like they were her own, and guarded the compound with the fierceness of a lioness protecting her cubs. Ezekiel moved differently from the rest. He walked with calm confidence, greeting everyone with a warm smile that never revealed too much. The elders trusted him, mothers prayed for a son like him, and even the children ran to him when they needed help tying their shoes. But behind his gentle laugh lived a boy who carried his own shadows, questions he never answered and truths he tucked behind his steady gaze. No one knew what kept his heart so guarded, but everyone agreed he was one of the good ones. The rest of the neighbors were a mix of people who lived closely yet knew little about one another. Teachers who corrected papers under dim lights, drivers who returned home smelling like petrol, tailors whose sewing machines never seemed to rest, and businesswomen who juggled profit and survival. Their lives overlapped, sometimes in harmony, sometimes in conflict, They shared walls, shared water taps, shared frustrations, and shared assumptions. Some were kind, others quick to judge. Some offered help, others waited for trouble to entertain them. Together, they formed a community of shadows and stories, each person affecting the other, whether they meant to or not. And in this bustling compound, with its loud characters and soft secrets, the stage quietly set itself for the journey about to begin. One that would shake the walls, test loyalties, and remind everyone that in Africa, a story doesn't just belong to one person. It belongs to the whole community. The sun was sinking behind the tall buildings when the message arrived. Quiet, unexpected, and sharp like a mosquito's bite. Aisha sat on a small wooden bench outside her room, her fingers dusty with Gary she had been helping her mother sift. The air around her was heavy with the tired sigh of the evening. She wasn't expecting anything, not even a greeting. So when her phone buzzed, she frowned and whispered, "Who could be calling me at this hour?" The number wasn't saved. No profile picture. No name. Only a green notification blinking like an eye in the dark. She hesitated. Something inside her chest tightened. Still, she opened it. The moment her eyes landed on the content of that message, the world around her stopped. Her breath stilled. Her heart began pounding, loud and wild, like a talking drum calling warriors to battle. She gripped the phone so tightly her knuckles turned pale. No, this cannot be real," she whispered, voice shaking. Her skin felt cold, as if the message had reached inside her and stolen her warmth. Then came the scream. A scream sharp enough to slice through conversations. A scream strong enough to make the cooking spoon fall from Mama Dar's hand. A scream fearful enough to silence children mid-laughter. Aisha, what is it?" Voices shouted as doors swung open. Feet slapped the ground, sandals scraping as people ran toward her room. Within seconds, the courtyard filled. People crowded around her, forming a tight circle like elders gathering for judgment. Women with wrappers tied high on their chests leaned forward. Men wiped sweat off their brows, breathing heavily from rushing. Children hid behind their mothers, peeking with wide, curious eyes. Mama Dara pushed her way to the center. "Move aside. Let me see the child," she ordered. Aisha's hands trembled. Her eyes were wide, filled with the kind of fear that made even adults step back. But her lips refused to open. The words were trapped inside her like frightened birds. What did she see? Did someone threaten her? Is it witchcraft? Tell us, Aisha. Every question was another stone thrown into the fire growing around her. Her shaking silence only deepened confusion. And confusion, the kind that rests in a crowded compound, never stays quiet for long. Before anyone knew the truth, rumors began to spread like dry leaves blown by the harmattan wind. A message came to her phone. From who? Maybe from a boy. No, maybe someone cursed her. I heard she saw something terrible. I heard she fainted before screaming. You didn't see her faint. Are you calling me a liar? Voices rose, clashing in the courtyard. Some neighbors grabbed their children, pulling them back as though danger was hanging in the air. Others peeked from doorways, whispering nervously. The compound, normally full of laughter and evening greetings, suddenly felt like a pot about to boil over. Each household began twisting the story to match its fears. In Aisha's area, an old woman declared, "It must be a warning from the ancestors. This generation doesn't listen." Across the courtyard, a man shook his head. "No, it is these children and their phones. They invite trouble with their ignorance." A group of young girls huddled together. Maybe someone exposed her secrets. One whispered, maybe she did something wrong. A boy argued, why must it be her fault? You people always blame girls. But the girls were already spreading another version. In the far corner, two brothers muttered, what if someone in the compound is trying to harm people? What if we are next? Each story grew legs, then wings, then fangs. Within minutes, fingers began pointing, sharp, accusing, and careless. You, Chinedu, didn't I hear your voice behind her window this afternoon? Me? I didn't go near that side. Your sister fights with Aisha all the time. Maybe she sent something. Keep my sister's name out of your mouth. Another person hissed. It must be one of these people who borrow money and refuse to pay back. Their shame is chasing them. People snapped. Tempers rose. Old bitterness seeped into the evening air like smoke from a forgotten fire pit. Last month you accused my child of stealing your slippers. And didn't your child steal them? You see your mouth? Always loud. You better lower your voice before I lower it for you. Past grudges, ones buried under months of forced smiles, came crawling back with sharp claws. Noise wrapped the courtyard. People shouted over one another. Mothers clapped their hands in frustration. Men stepped forward, trying to calm things, but their voices drowned under the storm of angry tongues. Friendships began cracking like dry ground in the sun. Neighbors who had shared salt and pepper just yesterday were now glaring at one another. People who once stood together during blackouts suddenly stepped apart, as if they no longer trusted the ground beneath each other's feet. Even the children sensed a shift and backed away, holding on to their mother's wrappers. Everybody keep quiet. Mama Dara shouted, raising her hands. You people want to tear down this compound because of what you don't understand. Her voice hit the courtyard like a stone dropped into water. The noise softened just a little. She crouched beside Aisha. My child, she said in a gentler tone. Speak to us. What did you see? Aisha swallowed hard, tears forming at the corner of her eyes. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I don't know who sent it, but what I saw, it wasn't meant for me. The courtyard held its breath. What did she mean by that? Who was it meant for then? Is someone targeting people here? Ha! Trouble has come. Fear grew like a shadow stretching under the dying sun. Aisha's fingers tightened around her phone. She tried to speak again, but another wave of shock silenced her. Her silence, soft, trembling, heavy, spread to the compound like mist. And in that silence, people began stepping backward, unsure of who to trust anymore. The courtyard, once a place of laughter and evening gossip, had now become a battlefield of suspicion. Aisha looked around at the frightened faces, guilt rising in her chest. She had not planned for any of this. The message had hit her like lightning, but the thunder brought into the compound was louder, deadlier, and far from over. Tonight, the compound would not sleep, not while the truth still hid in the shadows. The courtyard had grown restless, a quiet storm brewing under the fading sun. Aisha clutched her phone, the message burning in her mind like a coal that refused to cool. Every pulse in her body felt heavy with the weight of knowledge that was not hers to wield freely. She pressed the phone against her chest and whispered, If I speak, everything will break. Her fingers trembled. She imagined what would happen if the secret escaped her lips. Homes she loved might crumble, friendships would fracture, and innocent hearts might bear the pain of others' sins. Her stomach twisted with dread. Even the warm evening air felt sharp, slicing through her calm like the teeth of a lion. Memories crowded her mind, ghosts of old betrayals that had once scarred her heart. She recalled friends who had whispered lies behind her back, laughing at her trusting nature. She remembered when a close cousin had stolen her small savings, leaving her helpless and humiliated. Faces of those who had abandoned her in times of need appeared unbidden, and each one whispered, Do not trust too easily, child. Speak carefully. Her fear was not just of the message, but of the chaos it could release, a ripple that could drown everyone she cared for. Torn between peace and justice, she stared into the courtyard where neighbors argued softly, suspicion written in every crease of their foreheads. Silence felt safer. Speaking could protect one group while destroying another. Her heart ached with the impossible choice. Keep quiet and shield some, or reveal the truth and risk shattering everything. What am I to do? She murmured, her voice small, swallowed by the growing murmurs of the compound. Meanwhile, the compound itself began to twist under misdirected suspicion. Mama Dara, standing near the gate with her sharp eyes, suddenly felt the invisible weight of accusation pressing down on her. Whispers fluttered to the crowd like restless birds. She's orchestrating this, I'm sure of it, a neighbor muttered. She wanted to control the story, to show who rules this compound. Fingers pointed subtly, and even the elders raised their brows, silently weighing the landlady's influence. Then, Someone dared to mention the old scandal, the association funds that had vanished months ago. A hush fell briefly, then erupted again. Maybe this message is connected. "The missing money," a man exclaimed, his voice trembling with suspicion. Perhaps someone is finally exposing the thief. Every resident began to connect dots, some real, most imagined. Old scandals awakened like lions from a long slumber, their teeth bared once more. The chairman, a tall man whose authority carried weight to the compound like a drumbeat, stepped into the middle of the chaos. "Enough!" he shouted. His voice reverberated through the walls, startling even the children. "Who is responsible for this madness? Young people, speak. Tell me who did this before I call the elders." His words shook the courtyard. Youths glanced at one another, wide-eyed, knowing that any accusation could ignite fire. Rumors of police involvement began to seep in, carried by whispers more potent than any drum. "They will come," someone said, fear twisting their voice. "If this doesn't stop, the officers will be here before sunrise." Mothers pulled their children closer. Men frowned, restless, wondering how a single message could summon the law to their doorstep. Anxiety spread like spilled oil, catching every dry leaf in the compound. Meanwhile, the message itself began to travel faster than anyone could control. Phones buzzed in every hand. WhatsApp groups, once used for casual greetings and shopping lists, now carried the explosive news. Nobody knew who had forwarded it first. Accusations multiplied, and with each forward, suspicion deepened. "I didn't send it," one voice insisted. "I only share what I heard." Another snapped. "It came to me. I only pass it on." The chain of responsibility twisted, tangled, and grew ever longer, until every resident felt both a victim and a suspect. In the center of it all, Aisha pressed the phone against her chest again, heart hammering. Every accusation, every whisper, every finger-pointing felt like a stone thrown at her. She realized, with quiet despair, that the compound's harmony had been shattered not by a single person, but by the combination of fear, assumptions, and careless words. And she, tiny, trembling, alone, was both witness and unwilling conductor of the storm. The compound simmered with tension, but among the elders there was a particular kind of anger, slow, deliberate, and heavy with disappointment. They shook their heads, muttering under their breath about the recklessness of a youth. "Back in my time," Baba Kofi said, his voice low but sharp, "we spoke with care. Words were measured like gold coins. Now, a single message spreads like wildfire, and no one thinks of the harm." Another elder, Mama Funk, tapped her walking stick against the dusty ground. "Phones have made them careless. They chase gossip like children chasing wind, and this chaos is their doing." The younger residents bristled, their cheeks flushed with indignation. Tund, a young driver, stepped forward. "We are not careless. Aisha did not ask for this to happen. She is only the messenger, yet you treat her like the enemy." Chinyere, a businesswoman, crossed her arms. "We grew up with rules, yes, but we also grow in a world with phones and WhatsApp. Should we punish the child for a world we did not create?" The elder's eyes narrowed, but some youth were firm, defending the quiet girl at the center of the storm. Words clashed with respect. Tradition battled the new age. Some whispered about morality, the ethics of truth, and the responsibility to speak wisely. Others spoke of carelessness, of impulsive digital sharing that could fracture community. In the midst of this growing divide, Ezekiel stood silently, a shadow among the crowd. His usual calm had shifted into an unsettling quiet. He did not argue, did not defend, yet his presence was magnetic. Everyone sensed he knew more than he revealed. Neighbors' eyes flicked toward him, curiosity twisting into suspicion. "He knows something," one woman muttered, her voice quivering. "See how he watches Aisha? He is part of this, mark my words." Ezekiel's gaze followed Aisha as she shuffled through the crowd, her small frame trembling. He saw the fear etched into her every movement, and the weight of her decision pressing upon her shoulders. A sigh escaped him, almost imperceptible, but it carried the tension of a secret too heavy to speak. "Quiet boy," whispered an older man, shaking his head. "Too quiet. He holds truths behind his lips, and I fear what they might be." Ezekiel's hands tightened around the strap of his bag. Every breath he drew seemed measured, careful. Each pause in his silence was a statement, a warning perhaps, that a secret rested behind him, a truth that could topple the fragile balance of the compound. No one knew what he hid, but they all felt its presence, like the wind before a thunderstorm. The courtyard was no longer merely a place of gossip. It had become a court of judgment, split between the old and the new, the careful and the impulsive, the innocent and the knowing. And in its heart, Ezekiel's silent vigilance promised that when the truth came, it would arrive like a lightning strike, sudden and impossible to ignore. Aisha's hands shook like young branches in a sudden wind. The weight of what she knew pressed upon her chest, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. Each heartbeat was a drum echoing a warning. She could no longer carry this burden alone. She scanned the courtyard, eyes settling on Ezekiel, who stood apart from the murmuring crowd. "Ezekiel," she whispered, voice trembling like dry leaves. I have something you must see." He stepped closer, wary but steady, his calm presence offering the first comfort in a storm of chaos. Aisha drew him aside, into shadow of the compound's old mango tree. The message glowed on her phone, a series of screenshots and a recording that burned hotter than fire. Faces of betrayal, stolen trust, and shameful acts unfolded before them. The secret was so deep, so raw, it felt as if the compound itself had crumbled under its weight. Ezekiel's face shifted like a storm rolling in. First shock, then fear, then a flicker of guilt that unsettled Aisha even more. This cannot be true," he muttered, voice low and strained. Who sent this?" Her lips trembled. It wasn't a stranger. "It's someone from here, someone we know." A hush fell over the courtyard as the truth began to leak like water from a cracked clay pot. Whispers spread faster than wind through millet fields. Everyone wondered who could hold such resentment, what long-hidden jealousy or betrayal could drive someone to expose secrets so violently. Eyes darted from neighbor to neighbor. Trust evaporated like morning dew under the sun. By the evening, the courtyard pulsed with anger and fear. Voices clashed like thunder before a storm. Accusations flew. Old alliances broke. "You hid this from us," shouted one mother, pointing at her neighbor. "You think you are better than the rest of us," yelled another. Friends who once shared meals now face each other as enemies. Some families packed hurriedly, their belongings spilling into dusty corners, like broken calabash pieces scattered by careless hands. Secrets surfaced as quickly as the wind carries dry leaves. The compound was no longer a home but a battlefield, a place where every glance carried suspicion and every word could ignite another fire. And at its heart, Aisha and Ezekiel stood silent witnesses to a truth that had changed everything, knowing that nothing could return to the way it had been. The courtyard was thick with tension. Dust hung in the air like a warning, and every eye was fixed on Aisha. The chairman stepped forward, his voice booming like a drum in the still evening. "Aisha," he commanded, his words pressing on her chest like a heavy stone. "No more hiding. Tell us what this message holds. Who is behind it?" Aisha's knees trembled. Her eyes darted to Mama Dara, who leaned against the gate with a sharp smile. "Do not waste our time, child," Mama Dara hissed, her words slicing through the air like a knife. "We have lived with lies too long. Speak now, or your silence will cost you dearly." The whispers of neighbors turned into murmurs and roars, but Aisha drew a deep breath. She clenched her fists, feeling the hot pulse of truth beneath her ribs. Slowly, she spoke, voice quivering yet clear. It was someone here, someone we know. They did this, for reasons I cannot condone, but the truth must be seen." The crowd leaned in, eyes widened. Gasps traveled like wind across dry grass. The accused staggered, shaking, their face paling, as if the walls themselves had betrayed them. They tried to speak, but no words came, only the raw collapse of pride and fear, the weight of community judgment pressing down. Finally, the guilty voice broke the silence. "Yes, it was me. I took what was not mine, and I hid it, thinking I could escape shame." The crowd fell silent, the confession hanging heavy like smoke from a dying fire. But the compound stillness shattered with a new revelation. Someone else, trusted and familiar, stepped forward in trembling honesty. "And I I aided them, they admitted, eyes wide with guilt and fear. The betrayal struck like a lightning bolt. Hearts pounded, jaws clenched, and the compound itself seemed to hold its breath, stunned into disbelief. Trust had fractured, but the truth, finally, was laid bare. The compound lay quiet, heavy with a silence that felt almost sacred. Days of shouting, accusations, and fear had drained the air. No one spoke at first. Even the wind seemed to pause as though waiting for the dust to settle. Neighbors whispered cautiously to one another, voices soft like the rustle of dry leaves. "How quickly we judge her before knowing the truth," murmured one woman, shaking her head. Across the compound, friends who had once laughed and shared food now kept their distance, bending under the invisible weight of distrust. Some villagers stepped forward gently, offering apologies like soft rain on parched earth. "I spoke without thinking," a young man admitted, bowing his head. Others, however, held their bitterness tight, old wounds refusing to heal. At the edge of the courtyard, the elders gathered, leaning on their canes, faces etched with the lessons of a lifetime. "Shame comes to those who speak without wisdom," muttered Mamadar quietly, eyes scanning the compound for remnants of trust. Amid the quiet, Aisha walked slowly, her steps measured, her chest lighter yet steady with newfound strength. The memory of that burning crowd and the power of the truth lingered in her mind. She had learned that words could heal or they could destroy, and the weight of them was hers to carry. Each day, her voice grew firmer, no longer swallowed by fear. Children followed her with silent admiration, peering from behind doorways and railings, learning courage by watching her stand tall. Even the former critics approached carefully, heads bowed, hands extended in tentative peace, hoping to rebuild trust that had once been smashed in anger. Aisha offered quiet smiles, her calm presence teaching more than words ever could. She moved through the compound with ease now, no longer shrinking from eyes that once pierced her confidence. The villagers watched, hearts softening, understanding that she had transformed, not by seeking revenge, but by embracing truth with grace. The compound, once fractured, now hummed softly with the cautious rhythm of renewal. As Aisha walked steadily in the center of it all, a living lesson in courage, wisdom, and resilience. The elders gathered under the large neem tree, its branches spreading wide like a wise old guardian over the compound. Their voices, though calm, carried the weight of generations. "Remember, my children," the eldest said, leaning heavily on his carved staff. "When truth is mishandled, it can tear down even the strongest family." Heads nodded around him, the faces of villagers reflecting a mix of shame and understanding. A mother brushed her child's hair and murmured softly, "Secrets meant to protect hearts often become shadows that poison every household." The words sank deep. Each family began to see the danger of hushed whispers and concealed truths. Aisha, standing nearby, felt the truth of these lessons strike her very core. One small digital message, sent carelessly, had scattered neighbors like dry leaves in a harmattan wind, turning friends into strangers, laughter into suspicion. Parents gathered their children close. "Justice," they said, "arrives slowly and often with painful cuts. Learn to watch, to listen, and to choose your words carefully." Aisha nodded quietly. Wisdom was not only in speaking the truth, but in knowing when the time was right. She understood that courage and patience could heal as much as honesty. Days passed, and slowly, the compound began to breathe again. Arguments that once rose like thunder now faded into distant echoes. The elders convened and introduced new rules for speech, for digital conduct, and for maintaining harmony within the walls. The whispers that once fueled rumors lost their power as people chose listening and truth over gossip. Aisha walked through the courtyard, noting the small signs of healing, the neighbors sharing meals once more, children laughing freely, fences repaired after months of neglect. Each new dawn seemed to strengthen her spirit. She understood, more than ever, the force of words and the fragile threads that held a community together. By nightfall, she would retreat to her room, but not in fear. She was wiser, braver, and aware that a single sentence, spoken with care or recklessness, could shape destinies forever. The compound had endured storms, secrets, and betrayals, yet it stood again, stronger for the lessons learned. And in that stillness, Aisha knew her journey had not only transformed her, but would echo through the compound, whispered softly as a tale for generations to come.